Kai crouched down on the rooftop opposite the royal palace, a sack slung over his shoulder. Okay Kai, you've robbed markets without getting caught. You've robbed rich merchants without getting caught. You even stole Mrs. Haver's famous apple pie without losing a single finger. He took a deep breath. This is just the same thing, but with 50 times more guards. It's chill. He adjusted the mask over his face. Do this for Dad, he reminded himself. He needs the money for medicine. And if you make it out alive, maybe you can also get him that ridiculous feathered hat he wanted. For a moment, he imagined his father's proud smile, then immediately replaced it with the mental image of his dad smacking him on the head and yelling, "Are you stupid, boy? You robbed the royal family." Kai shook the thought away. No backing out now. You're doing this. You're stealth itself. He leapt across to the palace wall. By the time he reached the top, he was breathing heavily. See, easy, he panted. Now just find the treasury, grab the gold, and he was cut off. And trespass directly into my private quarters. Kai froze mid-step. The voice behind him was smooth, dripping with the kind of arrogance only someone born in silk sheets could manage. Turning slowly, Kai came face to face with the prince, lounging on the palace balcony railing. The prince smiled lazily. Well, a little rat in my palace. Kai swallowed. I'm the new cleaner. The prince's smirk widened. Cleaner. With enough dirt on your boots to plant a garden. He stood, and something about the way he moved set every alarm bell in Kai's head ringing. I should have you thrown in the dungeons. Or better yet, he leaned in, eyes glinting. Executed. Kai's heart nearly stopped. That seems dramatic. The prince tilted his head. You amuse me, so I'll make you a deal. Kai blinked. Ideal. 1 month, the prince said. Serve me for 1 month. Do everything I say, and I'll let you go. Define serve. The prince's smirk deepened. Oh, you'll find out. Kai stared. You're insane. And you, the prince said, stepping closer, are in no position to negotiate. The next day, Kai's first official morning as royal servant/prisoner began with a rude awakening. Something cold and very wet hit his face. He shot up from the overly fancy bed the prince had told him to sleep in the night before. What the? Good morning, little thief. Prince Adrian stood by the bed holding an empty bowl. Kai wiped his dripping face. Did you just throw water at me? Not water, rose water. Adrian's lips curved in amusement. You smelled common. Kai stared at him. You can't just. I can. I'm the prince. Kai inhaled slowly, rolling his eyes. Your month of service begins now, Adrian announced, walking to the window. I have several tasks for you today. Kai grabbed the blanket and muttered, What am I doing? Laundry, cleaning the stables. Don't be absurd, Adrian said. You're my personal attendant. That means you'll do exactly what I tell you, no matter how petty or unnecessary. Few minutes later. Task 1, hold my hair back while I eat grapes. Kai blinked. What? Adrian reclined in a silk chair, tossing a grape in his mouth. I don't want my hair to touch the fruit. It's royal hygiene. Kai rolled his eyes and awkwardly stood behind him, holding back the prince's perfectly smooth hair. You know, most people just tie it up. I am not most people. Task 2, fan me during my afternoon nap. Kai sat on a chair beside the bed, lazily flapping a large fan while the prince lay there like he was posing for a painting. You're enjoying this way too much, Kai muttered. Adrian cracked one eye open. Perhaps, but I think you're enjoying not being in a dungeon. Kai glared at him, and unfortunately, the man wasn't wrong. By the time evening rolled around, Kai was exhausted. He flopped onto the guest bed again, staring at the ceiling. 1 month of this, he could handle 1 month of fetching grapes, holding hair, then to be in the dungeons. The next day, Kai was in the middle of polishing Adrian's unnecessarily shiny shoes, which already looked polished enough to blind someone, when the heavy double doors to the prince's chambers swung open. The king walked in, his royal cape trailing behind him, and the air instantly thickened with authority. Kai froze mid-polish show. That's the king? Great. I'm dead. The king's sharp eyes landed on him immediately. Who? He said, voice like a low rumble. Is that? One of the guards at the door stepped forward nervously. Your Majesty, he's, a thief. The king's brows shot up. A thief, in the palace? His tone grew sharper. Why was this not reported to me at once? The guard exchanged an awkward glance with his partner. The prince told us not to say anything, your majesty. The king's gaze swung to Adrian, who was lounging on his couch. And why? The king asked slowly. Is this thief still alive? Adrian's lips curved lazily. Because I'm bored. Kai choked on air. That's the excuse. That's the entire reason I'm not dead. The king pinched the bridge of his nose like he'd aged 10 years in that single moment. Adrian, if you're that bored, get married. Adrian sat up with a dramatic sigh. Father, marriage is a commitment. I can't just get married. Yes, you can, the king interrupted, already walking toward the door. And you will. The autumn ball is close. Eligible nobles from across the kingdoms will attend. You'll pick one. Adrian's eyes narrowed slightly. We'll see. The king ignored him entirely, glancing back at Kai once more, eyes briefly narrowing. And as for you, thief. Kai sat up straight, ready to plead for his life. If my son hasn't executed you by the ball, the king said dryly, I'll expect a very good explanation as to why you're still breathing from him. Then he left, cape swishing dramatically. Kai let out the breath he'd been holding. He hates me. Adrian smirked. He hates everyone. Don't take it personally. Kai turned to Adrian, still a little shaken. Okay, easy fix. You heard your dad. Get yourself a wife. And then let me go. Boom. You're not bored anymore. I'm not stuck here polishing your shoes. Adrian gave him a slow, unimpressed look. A wife. Yes, a wife, Kai said, gesturing wildly. You know, cute dress, cute smile. Anyone who won't mind feeding you grapes while you nap. I already have someone for that. Adrian cut in, smirking. Kai's eyebrow twitched. That someone is me, and I'm not staying. Adrian leaned forward slightly, his tone dripping with amusement. You think a wife will keep me entertained? I don't think I'll find nobles half as amusing as watching you try to curtsy without falling over. Wait, what? Adrian ignored the protest, glancing at the window. And besides, the ball is in a week. Far too soon to chain myself to someone. Kai blinked. A week? Yes, Adrian said, in the most casual tone possible. Which means I have 7 days to decide what to do with you. Kai groaned. Great. So I'm just your entertainer for another week. That night, Kai sat shirtless in the absurdly soft bed the palace had given him, which felt less like luxury and more like a padded prison cell. He stared up at the gilded ceiling, his mind drifting to his father. He's probably wondering where I am. Kai pictured his dad hunched over at the workbench, coughing into his sleeve. The whole point of the palace break-in was to get enough gold for his medicine. And now, instead of returning home with bags of treasure, Kai was stuck fanning a spoiled prince while wearing clothes that made him itch in places he didn't know could itch. This is ridiculous. I have a week before that ball. If I can get Adrian to pick a wife, he'll be busy with her, and I can slip out. He sighed, rubbing at the back of his neck. Hang in there, Dad. I'll figure this out. 1 week. Then I'll get you the medicine. His voice dropped softer, almost a whisper. I'm sorry I'm not there right now. Unbeknownst to him, the door creaked open. Adrian leaned against the doorway, having fully intended to bother Kai about helping him pick ball outfits, but the words froze in his throat when he saw the thief sitting there, half naked in the moonlight, bare shoulders catching the glow. For a moment, Adrian simply stood there, something unreadable flickering in his gaze. Then, as Kai turned, almost catching him staring, he stepped inside like he hadn't just been shamelessly staring. Ever heard of knocking? Kai snapped, grabbing his shirt. Adrian's lips twitched. Ever heard of locking the door? Kai glared, tugging the fabric over his head. What do you want? Nothing. Adrian's tone was casual, but his eyes lingered just a second too long before he strolled out again. Good night, little thief. The next morning, Kai was halfway through his breakfast bread when a palace messenger walked up, bowing to Adrian. It's done, Your Highness. The doctor has been paid in full for the man's treatment. Kai blinked, looking between them. What are you talking about? Adrian took a sip of tea without looking at him. Your father, his medicine bill is covered. You can stop muttering apologies to the ceiling at night. Kai froze, the bread halfway to his mouth. How did you know? You talk to yourself. Adrian cut in simply. Kai's throat tightened. You didn't have to. I know. Adrian interrupted, leaning back in his chair. But I wanted to. Kai stared at him, feeling gratitude but also suspicious. Why? Adrian smirked faintly, meeting his gaze. Because I'm still bored. And you're more fun when you're not worrying yourself to death. Kai spent the rest of breakfast in a daze. Adrian paying for his father's medicine had thrown him completely off balance. He felt grateful and touched. Maybe under all that royal arrogance, Adrian might actually be. Nope, not going there. If anything, this was all the more reason to make Operation Free the Thief succeed. The sooner Adrian found some dazzling noble to obsess over, the sooner Kai could leave. By afternoon, Kai was wandering the palace gardens, scribbling names into a notepad. Adrian strolled beside him, hands clasped behind his back. And what exactly are you doing? Research, Kai said, keeping his eyes on the page. I'm compiling a list of your best options for the ball. Adrian leaned over his shoulder. Lady Eleanor. She once screamed at a servant because her tea was lukewarm. Okay, scratch her off. Lord Dorian. He tried to seduce my cousin last summer. She's 17. Kai stopped writing, grimacing. He's gross. Adrian smirked. Shall I go on? Kai huffed, flipping to a new page. Fine, then you tell me who you actually like. Adrian glanced at him, the corner of his mouth curling. I already have someone in mind. Kai brightened. Great. Oh. Adrian's gaze lingered just a beat too long. Instead of answering, he straightened his cuffs like the question had never been asked. Don't worry about it, little thief. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting, Adrian said smoothly, already walking away. Kai groaned, following after him. You're impossible. 5 days later, the day of the ball arrived much too quickly for Kai's liking. The palace buzzed with activity, servants rushing with trays, and nobles arriving in carriages that looked more expensive than his entire neighborhood. Kai's plan was simple: push Adrian toward the most eligible nobles, and quietly vanish before the night was over. This is it, he told himself as he strode toward the prince's chambers. One night of matchmaking, then I'm free. He found Adrian already dressed in deep navy embroidered with gold. Not bad, Kai admitted reluctantly. You'll have them falling at your feet. This, Adrian said, gesturing to the outfit laid out on the bed, is exactly what you're wearing. It was a tailored black and emerald suit. Except the shirt was scandalously loose at the collar, the trousers fitted, and the entire thing somehow managed to make him look expensive and very noticeable. Kai crossed his arms. I'm not wearing that. Too much chest. Too tight. Too fancy. Perfect, Adrian said, already shoving the jacket into his arms. You're my advisor tonight. My very attractive advisor. I don't want to be attractive or your advisor, Kai protested. That, Adrian said with a wicked grin, is not up to you. 1 hour later, at the ballroom, Kai stuck close to Adrian, scanning for potential matches. All right, Lady Mirabelle over there, gorgeous. Likes horses. Go talk to her. Adrian took one glance and said, she's wearing orange. So, I hate orange. You're impossible. Kai rolled his eyes. After several failed attempts, each ruined by Adrian's snide comments, Kai spotted Lady Isolde, a poised noblewoman with enough diamonds on her necklace to buy an entire street. Perfect, he thought. All right, go on, Kai whispered, steering Adrian toward the palace gardens where Isolde was admiring the roses. Say something charming. Don't mention executions. Lady Isolde, Adrian interrupted smoothly, stepping forward. She turned, eyes lighting up. Your Highness. I was hoping to speak with you. Kai grinned to himself and took a polite step back. Yes, this is it. Except, Adrian didn't say another word to her. Instead, he turned toward Kai, voice loud enough for the nearest nobles to hear. Actually, Lady Isolde, he said, I came out here with my date. Kai blinked. You're what? Adrian slid an arm around Kai's waist like it was the most natural thing in the world. This is Kai, my personal attendant. And the only person in this palace who can keep me entertained for more than 5 minutes. Kai froze as a ripple of whispers moved through the nearby guests. Lady Isolde raised a brow, clearly recalculating everything she thought she knew about the prince. Well, she said after a moment, I hope you to enjoy the ball. She left with the kind of smile that meant she'd be telling everyone what she'd just heard. Kai shoved Adrian's arm off the second they were alone. What was that? Adrian looked entirely too pleased with himself. Consider it a preventative measure. Now, no one will try to push boring nobles on me. You just told the entire court you're on a date with me, Kai hissed. Adrian leaned in, his voice low and annoyingly amused. Yes, and now you'll have to stay by my side all night. Wouldn't want to make your boyfriend look abandoned, would we? Kai's brain short-circuited. You're insufferable. Adrian's smirk widened. And you're blushing. The ballroom was still buzzing from the garden date incident, every whisper brushing against Kai's ears like a warning. Still, he wasn't giving up. If Adrian wouldn't chase nobles, maybe Kai could reverse the tactic, lure them into chasing him, then slip Adrian in. Foolproof. Probably. Target spotted. Near the buffet, a tall, well-dressed man with dark hair and an easy smile. Lord Cedric, Kai recalled someone saying. Perfect. Kai grabbed 2 glasses of champagne and wandered over, smile in place. Lord Cedric, right. I hear you're the only person in this room who's more bored than me. Cedric chuckled, accepting the glass. And who might you be? I don't think we've met. Kai, he said smoothly. The conversation flowed easily. Cedric was funny, charming, and clearly intrigued. Kai leaned in a little, ready to casually mention the prince, when a warm hand landed firmly on his shoulder. Kai turned to find Adrian standing there, his smile polite but his eyes sharp as glass. Cedric, he said in a tone that sounded friendly if you didn't notice the faint edge underneath. I see you've met my companion. Kai blinked. Adrian didn't even glance at him, addressing Cedric instead. My companion has a tendency to attract attention. I'm afraid I'll have to steal him away before he causes too much interest. Kai opened his mouth to protest, but Adrian's hand was already guiding him away toward the quieter gallery hall. Once they were alone, Kai yanked his arm back. What was that? I was working. Working, Adrian repeated, brows raising. You were obviously flirting with him. Kai sputtered. I wasn't. I was matchmaking for you. Adrian stepped closer, his voice low. I'm not interested in him. Kai frowned. Then who are you interested in? Because you're making this impossible. Adrian's smirk returned, slower this time, like he was enjoying every second of Kai's frustration. You'll figure it out eventually. Kai stared, speechless, as Adrian walked back toward the ballroom, leaving him in the gallery with his heart doing something entirely unhelpful. The next day, by the time the sun was up, the rumor of the prince dating his advisor were all over the palace and probably the kingdom. Servants passing through the halls whispered behind their hands. Guards exchanged knowing smirks. Kai didn't need to ask what they were talking about. Every overheard word like garden, date, hand on his waist, possessive look confirmed it. He groaned into his breakfast plate. This is a disaster. Across the table, Adrian popped a grape into his mouth and looked entirely unbothered. I think it's charming. Kai lifted his head. Charming? Half the nobles think we're whatever this is. Adrian smirked. Good. Let them. Kai was about to argue when the doors slammed open, and the king enters. The king strode into the dining room, crown slightly bent as though he hadn't even bothered to straighten it before storming in. His gaze locked on Kai immediately. So, he said slowly, I leave my son alone with a thief, and I wake up to find the entire court gossiping about him and his advisor. Kai froze. Sir, I can explain. Don't bother. The king cut in, turning to Adrian. What is this? Adrian leaned back in his chair, entirely too calm. This, he said, gesturing lazily to Kai, is the only person in this palace who doesn't bore me to death. The king's jaw tightened. That is not an answer. It's the only one you're getting, Adrian replied, sipping his tea like he wasn't one sentence away from starting a royal scandal. The king pinched the bridge of his nose. You have 1 week until the ball's gossip turns into policy. Choose a suitable spouse, or I'll choose one for you. Then he gave Kai one last long look, the kind that made him want to sink under the table, before leaving without another word. Adrian reached for another grape. Well, he said, that went well. Kai threw his napkin at him. That night, Kai had had enough. This is it, he whispered to himself, bent in the corner of his guest room, lacing his boots. I'm getting out of here tonight. He cracked the door open and peeked into the dark hallway. The guards rotated shifts at midnight, which gave him about 5 minutes to get past the east courtyard before they noticed he was missing. Kai moved like a shadow, hugging the walls. He passed a pair of guards deep in conversation about last night's ball. And they say the prince's advisor was wearing emerald. Made his eyes stand out. Apparently, Kai rolled his eyes and tiptoed past them, his jaw twitching. Halfway to the courtyard, Kai passed a display table with a small decorative vase sitting right in the center. It was made of fine porcelain, painted with what looked like pure gold. Kai stopped. "You don't need it," he told himself. The vase sparkled back at him. "But you deserve it." Before his brain could argue, his hands were already wrapping it in a bit of cloth and tucking it into his bag. Souvenir, he thought. He was halfway through the corridor when a guard rounded the corner. They locked eyes. "Evening," Kai offered weakly. The guard narrowed his eyes. "You're that advisor everyone's talking about, right? What are you doing out of your quarters?" Kai's brain went into overdrive. The prince sent me to inspect the backyard. Very important royal business." The guard stared. "The backyard?" "Yes." Before the guard could call him out, Kai bolted. Kai darted through an open door and down into the gardens. He heard the guards shout behind him, then the sound of running feet. Finally, he outran the guard and reached the far wall. He scrambled up the wall, almost losing the vase in the process. One last pull, and he tumbled over the other side. Kai lay there in the grass for a moment, breathing hard, grinning like a man who'd just gotten away with the impossible. "I'm free." He stood, dusted himself off, and looked down at the vase in his bag. "You and me, buddy," he said, patting it. "We're going places." Before sunrise, Kai had already traded the decorative vase to a very shady antique dealer in exchange for a pouch of coins. The dealer didn't ask questions, and Kai didn't offer answers. Now, he was walking down the street toward his father's workshop. A few minutes later, he got to his father's workshop. The door creaked as he stepped inside. His father looked up from behind the workbench, gray hair a little messier than usual. "Kai." Kai grinned. "Hey, old man." His father was across the room into steps, pulling him into a hug so tight it almost cracked Kai's ribs. "I heard the most ridiculous rumors." Kai froze. "Rumors?" His father stepped back, eyes twinkling. "Bet you're the prince's personal advisor. Everyone's been talking about it since the ball." Kai laughed awkwardly. Yeah, about that." And his father continued, "That same prince paid for my medicine bill in full." That shut Kai up fast. "I didn't know how you convinced him to do that," his father said, voice softening. "But, thank you." Kai looked away, suddenly very interested in the floor. "It wasn't really me." "Doesn't matter. I feel so much better already. That's enough." Kai swallowed hard, a small knot of gratitude and guilt twisting in his chest. "Just take the medicine, get better. That's all I want." They spent the rest of the morning together, Kai pretending not to notice how his father kept sneaking curious looks at him, like he wanted to ask more about the prince but decided against it. Still, as Kai lay in his bed that night, he couldn't shake the thought. Adrian didn't have to help. He just did. And for the first time, escaping didn't feel like the neat ending he thought it would. The morning after Kai's escape, Adrian was still lounging in bed when his guard knocked on the door. "My prince," the guard began cautiously, "we may have misplaced your advisor." Adrian sat up slowly. "Misplace?" The guard shifted uncomfortably. "He left the palace last night." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "And why am I hearing about this now instead of the moment it happened?" he asked in a dangerously calm tone. The guard stammered, We thought you'd be angry." "You thought correctly." Adrian dismissed him with a wave. "Leave." Meanwhile, Kai woke up in his childhood bed feeling glorious. He'd eaten normal food, slept without the sound of guards patrolling, and spent the entire day helping his dad. By the second day, he started wondering if maybe Adrian just didn't care enough to come after him. By the third, he was certain he'd gotten away with it. By the fourth, he was feeling cocky enough to tell the neighbor's kid about how easy the palace security was. 1 week later, the door to his father's workshop opened with a quiet jingle. Kai looked up from behind the counter, already saying, "Welcome," and immediately choked on his words. Adrian stood in the doorway, dressed in casual traveling clothes that somehow still looked expensive, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "Hello, advisor," he said smoothly. "It's me." Kai's father blinked in surprise. "Oh, my prince, Kai told me so much about you." Adrian's smile widened. "I hope they are all good things." "I'm here to collect something. Precious. Kai felt his stomach drop. The vase. Adrian's gaze slid to him like a blade. Not exactly. Kai stood frozen behind the counter, still processing the fact that the arrogant royal was standing in his father's shop. His father, however, was delighted. You have my gratitude for paying for my medicine, Your Highness. Adrian's smirk softened into something dangerously close to charming. It's important to take care of the people you value. His eyes flicked to Kai in a way that made his skin feel too warm. That evening, the three of them ended up at the small kitchen table. Kai sulked in his chair, while Adrian chatted politely about the workshop, the neighborhood, the weather, everything except the fact that Kai had escaped from him. When Kai tried to bring it up, Adrian just gave him a look that said, "We'll talk later." As night fell, Kai assumed Adrian would leave. After all, he was the prince. Surely he had a carriage waiting to whisk him back to his palace of gold and overly polished floors. But instead of standing, Adrian leaned back in his chair, perfectly relaxed. "I think I'll stay the night." Kai nearly choked on his tea. "Absolutely not." Adrian tilted his head, pretending to be curious. "Why not?" "For starters," Kai said quickly, holding up a finger, "this house is tiny. The ceilings are too low for your royal ego." Adrian raised an eyebrow. "Second," Kai continued, "there's no palace-level security here. A prince shouldn't be sleeping in a shop with one rusty lock on the door." "Then it's a good thing," Adrian said, smirking, "that you're such a skilled thief. I'll trust you to keep me safe." Kai narrowed his eyes. "Third, there's only one bed in my room." "Good," Adrian replied smoothly. "I'd hate for you to be lonely." Kai turned to his father, desperate. "Dad, tell him it's a bad idea." His father hesitated, looking between them with a bit of suspicion. Then shrugged. "He's welcome to stay. No sense sending him out into the night." Kai stared at him in betrayal. "You like him." "I like anyone who pays for my medicine," his father said, already heading for his own room. "You boys figure out the sleeping arrangements." Adrian's smirk didn't waver as he met Kai's glare. "Looks like I'm staying." Kai stormed into his room first, muttering curses under his breath as he yanked open the wardrobe and pulled out a spare blanket. "You're sleeping on the floor." Kai spun around. "Why, afraid you'll get a splinter." Kai tossed the blanket onto the floor. "Enjoy your nest, Your Highness." But Adrian didn't even glance at it. He stripped off his jacket and boots like he owned the place, then stretched out on Kai's bed. Kai's bed, which suddenly looked much smaller with a smug royal lying in the middle of it. "You're not sleeping on my bed," Kai started. "I am," Adrian interrupted, patting the space beside him. "Unless you want me to call your father in here to settle the dispute." Kai clenched his teeth, muttered something rude, and climbed into bed, as far from Adrian as the mattress allowed. It was a solid 30 seconds of silence before Adrian spoke, voice low. "You're very jumpy for someone who swears he hates me." "I'm not jumpy." Kai's voice cracked at the end, betraying him. Adrian chuckled. "You're. I can hear it in your breathing." Kai pulled the blanket tighter around himself, refusing to turn over, but then he felt the mattress dip. Adrian had shifted closer. "Personal space," Kai hissed. "It's a small bed," Adrian murmured, his voice warm against Kai's ear. "If you move any further, you'll fall off." Kai could feel the heat from him. "You're doing this on purpose," Kai said. "Obviously," Adrian replied. Kai forced himself to stay still, even as every nerve screamed at him to move. Adrian didn't push further, but he didn't move back either. The smell of sizzling eggs and fresh bread drifted into Kai's room, dragging him out of a half-sleep. The other half of his brain, however, was still fixated on the fact that Adrian was right there, lying far too comfortably on his bed. Kai slipped out first, determined to get a head start on breakfast before the prince could ruin it. His father was already at the table, pouring tea. "Morning, Kai. Did you and the prince sleep well?" Kai's fork paused midair. Before he could reply, Adrian strolled in, freshly dressed, hair perfectly in place as if he'd been attended by 3 servants instead of Kai's old pillow. "Good morning," he said warmly, sliding into the seat next to Kai. Adrian accepted a plate from Kai's father politely. "Thank you. This looks wonderful." But under the table, his knee pressed against Kai's. Kai nearly dropped his toast. "Do you mind?" he whispered. Adrian smiled at Kai. "Did you sleep well?" His hand slid under the table to nudge Kai's thigh. Kai gripped his cup. "Perfectly fine," he bit out. "That's good," Adrian said smoothly, still smiling at his father. I'd hate to think my presence was uncomfortable. By the time breakfast ended, Kai's father was laughing along with Adrian like they'd known each other for years. Adrian stood, thanking him again for the hospitality, and as he passed behind Kai's chair, he bent down just enough to murmur, "Pack your things. We're leaving after lunch." Kai almost choked on air. "What?" Adrian's smirk flashed. "You didn't think I came all this way for nothing, did you?" Kai blinked at Adrian. "What do you mean we're leaving?" "I'm not going anywhere with you." Adrian leaned casually against the doorframe, clearly enjoying himself. "You're coming back to the palace." "Why?" Kai asked, instantly suspicious. "So you can have me thrown in the dungeon properly this time." Adrian's lips curved. "No, you're going to be my advisor. Like before." Kai barked out a laugh. "Like before I escaped." "You'll be paid," Adrian said smoothly. Kai froze, paid handsomely. Kai's father, who had been tidying the counter, paused. "Define handsomely." 100 gold coins every month. Kai's jaw dropped. His father's rag slipped from his hand and hit the floor. "That's more than I make in 3 years," his father whispered. "Exactly," Adrian said. "I's never leaving Kai's. Enough to keep your father comfortable. Enough to pay for any medicine he might need for the rest of his life." Kai felt the temptation coil in his chest. "You're bribing me." "I'm offering you employment," Adrian corrected. Kai opened his mouth to argue again, but his father stepped in. "Kai, maybe you should take it. Just for a little while. Think about the money." Kai groaned. "You're supposed to be on my side." "I obviously am," his father said cheerfully. Adrian smirked. "So, advisor, do we have a deal?" Kai glared between the two of them. "Fine." Adrian's smile widened. A few hours later, the carriage rocked gently as it rolled away from Kai's street. Kai sat with his arms crossed, glaring out the window. "So, what exactly does an advisor do?" "I assume it's boring palace paperwork, giving political opinions, and telling you when your crown is crooked." Adrian said, lounging back in his seat. "Some of that." Kai narrowed his eyes. "Some." Adrian smiled faintly. "You'll also be responsible for keeping me entertained." Kai's head snapped around. "Entertained? An advisor needs to keep the prince's morale high," Adrian said smoothly, as though quoting an official handbook that only existed in his head. "That includes staying by my side during events, dining with me, making conversation." And occasionally, his gaze drifted deliberately down Kai's body before returning to his face. Other forms of morale support. Kai felt heat rush to his cheeks. "That's not in the job description." "It is now," Adrian said, leaning forward slightly. Kai scoffed, sitting back. "So basically, I'm your glorified pet." "You're my highly paid glorified pet," Adrian corrected. "Big difference." Kai muttered under his breath, "I should have just kept the vase and run to another kingdom." Adrian chuckled low. "Too late. You're mine now." Kai didn't like the way the palace guards bowing to him as if he belonged there, or how he was dragged straight past the grand hallways and into Adrian's private quarters. The moment the heavy double doors shut behind them, Kai dropped into the nearest chair. "So this is it? You dragged me here, dumped me in your quarters, and tell you the real reason I wanted you here," Adrian cut in, leaning casually against his desk. Kai crossed his arms. "Oh, this ought to be good." Adrian's smirk was sharper than usual. "My father is still pestering me to get married. The ball didn't help. Now he's convinced I'll pick someone soon." Kai raised a brow. "And you brought me here. Why?" "You need an advisor to pick your bride. That's cute." "Not exactly." Adrian pushed off the desk and walked toward him, each step slow and deliberate. "I was thinking I'd tell him I've already chosen someone. Someone unexpected. Someone who would make him stop bothering me for a while." Kai frowned, trying to read his expression. "Who?" Adrian stopped in front of him, tilting his head just slightly. Kai blinked. "Me?" He shot up from the chair. "No, absolutely not. I'm your advisor, not your fiancé," Adrian supplied smoothly, stepping closer. Kai backed up, only to find the edge of the desk behind him. "That's not funny." Adrian's eyes glinted. "I'm not joking. You'd be perfect. My father would never see it coming, and it would keep you right here where I can see you." Kai's pulse jumped. This isn't part of the advisor contract. Consider it an official duty, more pay, Adrian murmured, his voice low, leaning in just enough that Kai could feel his breath. Kai swallowed hard. And what exactly would this fake fiancé role involve? Adrian's lips curved into a slow smile. Public affection. Super convincing. Kai's voice wavered. How convincing? Adrian leaned in until their noses nearly touched. Let's just say, convincingly enough that even you might forget it's an act. Kai's hands gripped the desk behind him. Before Kai could say anything, Adrian stepped even closer and tipped his chin up with a single finger. First rule, Adrian murmured, you look at me like you trust me, even if you don't. Kai's throat went dry. That's not hard, he lied. Second rule, Adrian continued, leaning in so close Kai caught the faint scent of cedar and something sharper, you let me close the distance. Then Adrian did exactly that, tilting his head slightly until their lips brushed, not quite a kiss, but enough to make Kai's knees feel unreliable. Kai's breath hitched. Third rule, Adrian whispered, you don't pull away until I do. He let the words hang there before finally easing back, a smirk still on his lips. See, that was convincing. Kai exhaled sharply. You're insane. Where's my room? Adrian led him through a set of adjoining doors into a smaller but lavish chamber. Here, yours. Kai glanced around. His eyes caught on the connecting door. Is that? It leads to my room, Adrian said casually, as if this were perfectly normal. Kai gave him a flat look. Of course it does. The next morning, Kai stumbled sleepily into the sitting room between their chambers. Adrian was already there, sipping tea. Morning, darling, Adrian said casually. Kai blinked. Excuse me. Before Kai could say a word, the heavy double doors to Adrian's quarters swung open, and in stepped the king, radiating the kind of authority that made even the guards stand straighter. Kai froze mid-step, still halfway to the table where Adrian sat sipping tea like nothing in the world could possibly go wrong. The king's gaze landed on Kai, his brow furrowed. Kai winced. Hi. The king's head snapped toward Adrian. Is that the thief? The one who broke into my palace? Adrian didn't flinch. Yes. There was a long, loaded pause. And why, the king said slowly, is he standing in your private quarters, wearing royal clothes? Adrian set his teacup down slowly. Because, father, this is the person I intend to marry. The king's jaw dropped. What? Kai's hands shot up. Hold on. You're marrying the thief. The king looked between them. What? Are you mad? I'm strategic, Adrian replied calmly. This is the only person I've met who keeps me entertained. The king dragged a hand down his face. Adrian, this is not how marriage works. Adrian stood from his chair. This is how my marriage will work. Kai groaned, wanting to say something, but Adrian's hand was already resting lightly on his lower back, telling him to play along. The king shook his head like he was trying to physically remove the idea from his brain. We will speak privately, now. Of course, Adrian said smoothly, before glancing over his shoulder at Kai. Don't go anywhere, fiancé. Kai resisted the urge to throw the teacup at him. The king stormed into the adjoining study, Adrian strolling in after him, looking relaxed. Kai stayed in the sitting room. He could hear voices as the doors didn't close all the way. You've lost your mind, the king snapped. A thief. That's your grand idea for avoiding a political marriage. Adrian's voice was low. He's not just a thief. He's clever. He makes me think. He makes me interested. Kai froze. Interested? The king repeated skeptically. Yes. Adrian's tone dipped into something silkier. Do you know how rare it is to find someone who doesn't fawn over me the moment I look at them? He argues. He fights back. He doesn't care about my title. He makes me work for every reaction. Kai's ears burned. The king scoffed. You're saying you like him because he's difficult? Yes, and he'll be mine, Adrian said. So matter-of-factly it made Kai's heart trip over itself. And because when he's flustered, he's distracting. He's a criminal, the king interrupted. A charming criminal, Adrian corrected. Do you know how many nobles can make me laugh? None. Do you know how many have ever dared to talk back to me? Even fewer, and he's the only one who's made my life less insufferably boring. Kai's ears burned. Charming. Made his life less boring? What kind of flattery was that? The king sighed heavily. Adrian, Marriage is a political move. It's supposed to strengthen alliances. And I've decided I want an alliance with him, Adrian said firmly. I like having him close. Kai's stomach did an unhelpful little flip at the way Adrian's tone lowered at the word close. You can't expect the court to accept this, the king muttered. Then they'll have to learn, Adrian said. I'll prove to you he's worthy. Watch us at the ball. You'll see. There was a pause. The king's voice dropped to a grumble. Fine, but if this blows up, it's on you. Kai pulled back from the door, face warm. What the hell is wrong with his chest? Kai didn't know what was worse, being forced to learn the names of every important noble in the kingdom, or the fact that Adrian was clearly enjoying bossing him around. You need to know who's who, Adrian said, handing him a photo card. Duke Everlil, a collector of debts. Kai lounged on the couch, pinning the card between his fingers. Sure, looks like a guy who smells like old books. Adrian raised a brow. Kai leaned in towards the stack of photos. Is this Lord Thorin? Nice jawline. Adrian's pen stopped mid-note. Nice jawline. I'm just saying, if you're expecting me to be charming, I might as well acknowledge what I see. Adrian rolled his eyes and continued. This is Lord Fenton of Eastmark. Kai stared at the photo. He's handsome. Adrian's head snapped up. What? Kai grinned. I'm just saying, he has nice hair. Lord Fenton is married, Adrian cut in, to a woman twice his age who is terrifying, and who could have you exiled in a heartbeat. Next, to names later. Viscount Vale. Wow, he's even better looking than Lord Fenton. Kai. Adrian's tone was cold. Are you memorizing noble titles or compiling your next dating list? Kai smirked. Maybe both. Adrian leaned forward until he was inches away. You're mine for the ball. Keep your eyes where they belong. Kai rolled his eyes. Yes, your highness. At the ball. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers, and gowns worth more than Kai's father's shop. Nobles chatted and whispered, stealing glances at Adrian's companion. It didn't take long for the tall, dark-haired Duke Everhard to approach, smile as smooth as his tailored coat. I don't believe we've met, he said, offering Kai his hand. And I make it my business to know everyone worth knowing. Kai raised a brow. Then I guess I'm worth knowing. The Duke's chuckle was low. I'd like to find out. Before Kai could respond, a hand slid possessively around his waist. Duke Everhard, Adrian said warmly. Enjoying the evening? Immensely. The Duke said, eyes still on Kai. Adrian's smile sharpened. I'm sure you are. Within seconds, Kai was being steered away by Adrian's grip firm to the balcony. At the balcony, Kai turned to glare at him. You could have at least let me finish my drink. Adrian's eyes were darker now, a hint of something dangerous in them. You're mine for tonight, he said, voice low enough that it slid under Kai's skin. Don't make me remind you again. Kai tried to scoff. You're really committed to this fake fiancé thing. How? Adrian's lips curved in the faintest smirk. Remember that you're mine tonight. Kai swallowed hard. I remember. But the way Adrian said it, the heat in his tone, the tightening of his fingers at Kai's hip made Kai's knees feel just a little too unsteady for comfort. Back inside the palace, the prince didn't so much as glance at anyone else, just kept that firm hand at the small of his back all the way to his private chambers. The door closed with a quiet click. Kai raised a brow. You know, you don't have to stay in character when it's just us. Adrian's gaze swept over him slowly, deliberately. And who says I'm acting? Kai opened his mouth, but the words tangled somewhere between his brain and his throat when Adrian stepped closer. You made quite an impression tonight, Adrian murmured, his voice deep and edged with something that wasn't entirely teasing anymore. Half the room was staring at you. I didn't like it. Kai smirked, trying to cover the sudden spike in his heartbeat. Sounds like a you problem, Your Highness. Adrian stared at him for a moment without answering, then slammed his lips on Kai's. Kai froze for a second. The prince is kissing me, the prince is kissing me. Before instinct took over and he kissed back. The kiss deepened fast, Adrian's hand sliding up Kai's back, pressing him close until there wasn't a breath between them. Still think it's just an act, Adrian murmured against his lips, voice rough. Kai's only answer was another kiss, harder this time, his fingers tangling in Adrian's hair. The door slammed open. What in the? They broke apart instantly. In the doorway stood the king, expression halfway between scandalized and murderous. Kai tried to straighten his shirt without looking like he was straightening his shirt. This isn't what it looks like. The king's gaze flicked from his son's messy hair to Kai's flushed face. It exactly looks like what it looks like. Adrian, utterly calm, just said, "Father, meet your future son-in-law." Again. Kai groaned into his hands, "Kill me now." The next day, Kai wakes up to find Adrian already gone for the day. But before he can enjoy the peace, a palace servant bursts in with a sealed note saying it was delivered to him. The note is short, messy, and terrifying. It states, "We have your father. If you value his life, you will leave the palace quietly before sundown." Kai's blood runs cold. His first instinct is to sneak out, but the mention of palace tips him off. Whoever this is, they know where he's been staying. Adrian returns to find Kai pacing the room. Kai tries to hide the note, but Adrian spots it instantly, taking it from his hand, and his expression goes dark. Kai shook his head. "Don't go full Prince Panic mode. I can handle this. Over my dead body." The note's paper has a faint watermark from a specific printing press used by high-end merchants. Adrian orders his most loyal guard to quietly investigate. The trail points to the Duke of Everheart, the same Duke who flirted with Kai at the ball. Adrian's temper flares. "So he couldn't get you to dance with him. So now he thinks he can steal your family. You're making it sound like I'm your wife," I said. "Well, you're soon to be." Adrian wiggled his brows at him. "You're impossible." The prince's spy immediately figured out where Kai's father was kept. It was a small run-down abandoned warehouse. Kai insists he should go in alone because thieves know how thieves think. Adrian refuses, claiming, "I don't trust you not to get killed or kidnapped." They bicker until Adrian proposes a compromise. They both go, but disguised. Adrian tried on commoner clothes and somehow still looking like a walking royal portrait. "You're too clean. No one in the slums shines like that," Kai said. "Are you suggesting I roll in dirt?" Adrian said sarcastically. Kai, already smearing mud on his cheek. "I'm not suggesting. I'm doing." They slip into the Duke's warehouse under cover of night. Kai uses his skills to sneak past guards, with Adrian right behind him. Inside, they find Kai's father bound to a chair, alive but furious. The Duke steps out of the shadows, looking smug. "The prince's little toy. I see why you're so protective, Your Highness. But I've always loved you. How can a thief get to take you away from me?" Kai's eyes widened as he realized the Duke wanted the prince. That was why he wanted Kai out of the palace. Adrian's voice drops into lethal calm. "You're going to regret speaking." A tense fight breaks out. Adrian's sword skills are impressive, but Kai surprises everyone, including himself, by taking down two guards with nothing but a broken chair leg and a very well-aimed kick. They free Kai's father, but more guards rush in. Adrian grabs Kai's hand. "Run!" They sprint through the warehouse, dodging arrows, before diving into the canal where Adrian's carriage is waiting on the other side. Back at the palace, Kai's father is given medicine, food, and a warm bed. Adrian personally checks on him, adjusting the blankets and making sure he's comfortable. Kai watches from the doorway, heart twisting in a way that has nothing to do with fear. That night, Adrian brings Kai a glass of wine to calm his nerves. They end up sitting on the balcony together, the city lights spread out below. "You didn't have to risk yourself like that," Kai said. "I wasn't risking myself. I was protecting what's mine," Adrian says, completely serious. Kai looks away, cheeks warm. "You can't just say things like that." "Why not? It's true." "I think I'm in love with you," Kai blurted. The silence was instant and suffocating. Adrian didn't move, didn't blink, and just looked at him with an unreadable expression. Kai's face heated. "Forget I said anything. It was dumb." He didn't get to finish talking. Adrian was already so close Kai had to tilt his head back slightly to meet his gaze. "You think," Adrian murmured, voice low and edged with something dangerous. "Because I've known for weeks." Kai's breath caught. "You what?" Adrian's hand came up, crushing Kai's jaw with his thumb, tilting his face just enough for their eyes to lock. "You drive me insane. I can't stop wanting you." They were so close that Kai's pulse skyrocketed. "Adrian," Kai's voice cracked in warning. "Yes." The prince's tone was pure provocation, his lips a breath away from Kai's. Kai hated that his body betrayed him, leaning in ever so slightly. "You're impossible. And you're mine," Adrian said, before closing the distance. The kiss wasn't soft. It was claiming all heat and the faint taste of expensive wine. Kai made a muffled sound against his mouth, and Adrian's fingers curled into the back of his shirt, yanking him closer. When they finally broke apart, Kai's breathing was uneven, his lips tingling. Adrian smirked, brushing his thumb across Kai's lower lip. So, still just think you're in love with me? Kai swallowed, looking away. Shut up. Kai was still trying to catch his breath, still trying to pretend the kiss hadn't left him weak-kneed, when Adrian stepped back. Only, he didn't look like his usual cocky self anymore. He looked almost uncertain. Kai narrowed his eyes. What's with that face? You look like you're about to tell me the dog died. Adrian shot him a flat look. We don't have a dog. Then spit it out. The prince glanced away, which was suspicious enough, and fiddled with the cuffs of his shirt like he didn't quite know what to do with his hands. After everything with your father, and the Duke at the ball, and the kidnapping. He trailed off, then abruptly turned back to him. I want to make it official. Kai blinked. Make what official? Adrian took a breath, straightening his shoulders like he was going into battle. Yes, I want you to be engaged to me. Kai's mouth fell open, but only because he just admitted his feelings just now. Wasn't it a little too soon? He still couldn't stop the laugh that bubbled out. Wow, that sounded so romantic. You should write poetry. Adrian scowled, stepping closer again. I'm serious, Kai. I can tell. Your ears are red. They're not. Adrian reached up instinctively to cover them, then realized what he'd done and dropped his hands with a growl. I'm not nervous. This is important to me. Kai tilted his head, enjoying this way too much. Are you saying you're afraid I'll say no? Adrian's jaw tightened. I'm saying I'll make it worth your while to say yes. Kai's brows lifted. Are you trying to bribe me into marriage? It's called negotiating. Kai chuckled, leaning against the desk. I dunno. You're cute when you're flustered. Might make you sweat a little more before I answer. Adrian took another step closer, so close Kai's hip bumped the desk edge. Careful, thief. I might make you sweat first. Kai raised a brow, smirking. Is that a promise, Your Highness? Adrian's lips curved into a slow, wicked smile. Say yes and find out. Kai's heart thumped harder than he liked to admit, but he managed to keep his voice light. Fine, yes, but only because you're terrible at asking. The next day, the royal ballroom had never been so quiet. Adrian stood at the top of the marble steps, Kai at his side, the kind of smug smirk on his face that said I'm about to start trouble. The king, seated on his gilded throne, arched a suspicious brow. You have an announcement. Yes, father, Adrian said, his voice smooth and perfectly loud enough. I have chosen the person I intend to marry. Every noble in the room leaned forward. Adrian turned, offered Kai his hand, and Kai, because he was an agent of chaos, dramatically ignored it and just walked forward with a grin. Adrian didn't miss a beat. This is Kai, my future spouse. The room erupted. Gasps, whispers. Someone dropped a wine glass. The king just stared. The thief, former thief, Adrian corrected, and current royal advisor. Kai gave the king his most charming grin. Hi. The king slowly rubbed his temples. Adrian, you have tested me for many years. This is unique. Unique is what makes life interesting, Adrian replied. Over the next week, the kingdom was flooded with official proclamations. Prince Adrian to wed royal advisor. The day before the wedding, the king called them both to his private chambers. I don't like this, the king said, pacing, but I've seen the change in you, Adrian. You laugh more, you work harder, and you. His gaze landed on Kai. You care for my son. That's more than most. Kai tried not to fidget. Yeah, I do. The king sighed and sat down heavily. Then you have my blessing. On the morning of the wedding, Kai's dad stood in his simple but perfectly pressed suit, tears in his eyes. You were a little menace, he said, voice thick with emotion. Stealing apples, running from guards, and now you're marrying a prince. Kai grinned. Guess I'm just upgrading my crimes. His dad hugged him so tight Kai actually had to wheeze for air. I'm proud of you, son. A few minutes later, the royal chapel glittered with gold. Adrian stood waiting at the altar, eyes fixed on the man walking toward him. Kai's suit was cut to perfection, his hair swept back, a genuine glint in his eyes. When they joined hands, Adrian's grip was warm and sure. The king stepped forward to give his speech. I thought this was madness, he admitted. But I've seen that love can be found in the strangest places. And if my son has found it here, I will not stand in the way. Kai's grin softened. Adrian's eyes lingered on him like they were alone in the room. They exchanged vows, and when the officiant declared them married, Adrian didn't hesitate to pull Kai in for a kiss that was far too long for royal protocol, but no one dared interrupt. The wedding night. Their chamber was dark, with just the moonlight serving as a source of light, the air still carrying the faint sound of music from the distant celebration. Adrian closed the door and turned the key, leaning against it. "You're mine now," he murmured. Kai arched a brow. "Oh, now, what was I before?" "Practice," Adrian said with a smirk, crossing the room and backing Kai against the bedpost. Kai's breath hitched when Adrian's fingers trailed along his jaw down to the edge of his collar. Kai let out a sharp inhale when Adrian's lips found the side of his throat, tracing slow, deliberate kisses down to his collarbone. "Adrian, say my name like that again," the prince breathed, and then the rest of the night blurred into heat, laughter, and whispered promises. Weeks later, Kai sat in the palace gardens, a glass of wine in hand. Adrian dropped onto the bench beside him, stealing the glass without asking. Kai's dad's laughter floated from the other side of the garden where he was chatting with the king. Kai glanced at Adrian, their hands brushing, and neither of them pulled away. "Guess I really am a royal now." Adrian leaned in just enough for their shoulders to press. "Guess you are, my royal pain in the ass." Kai smirked. "And you wouldn't have it any other way." Adrian kissed him as an answer. The end.